Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. Hello and good morning. I just finished up my sobriety meeting this morning. It was a good one. Lots of newcomers from wow. It was just, we're what happens in the meeting stays in the meeting, so I'm going to respect that. But it was just really powerful as far as like newcomers coming and like the support of the folks in the group just reaching out and giving phone numbers and stuff. It was just such a powerful message of how we're not alone and reaching that point of like complete defeat and not knowing, hearing that there's a solution and and starting the journey to actually believing that and then finally knowing that. And um it was really inspiring. And what I wanted to talk about today though is how that experience was relived for me after stroke. So reaching that point of admitting complete defeat. Now, this is interesting for me to try to articulate in stroke recovery because I think that in the stroke community, I don't know that it would be terribly um, inspiring to people who had a stroke to hear what I have to admit complete defeat. Um, but for me, having experienced that as a path to acceptance helped me apply it then to stroke recovery. And that is because I think that I needed to accept the permanence of my invisible illness. And I could only do that in part by admitting that it happened and there was nothing I can do about it. You know, admitting complete defeat in sobriety was the beginning of my recovery. I had to learn that lesson again after stroke. Defeat is not the end of the fight. It's the beginning, but it's changing the way I look at the fight. I stop fighting what I can't change and start fighting for what I can change. Start fighting for myself instead of against myself. Stop fighting against reality and start fighting for the moment that I'm in, enjoying the moment that I'm in. Um, for so long after my stroke, I tried to push through what I tried to push through a brick wall. I tried to force myself back into my old life. I was ignoring my symptoms. I was minimizing my pain. Oh man, was I minimizing my pain? And really, I was punishing myself for something that was out of my control. I was punishing myself for my own limitations that were a result of my stroke. I thought that being strong after stroke meant pretending that nothing had changed. I wasn't recovering at all. I was fighting recovery. And this this feeling that I had throughout that time, in retrospect, mimicked the feeling that I had before I got sober, before I was willing to accept the the devastating reality of my condition, of my disease. And in stroke recovery, I had to admit that my brain was permanently damaged. And that doesn't mean that at that time of acceptance, and honestly, I'm still accepting. Every day, I'm making a decision to accept the devastating damage that was done, that happened inside my brain. And I need to accept every day that my brain is injured because I can't see it. It's just like sobriety. I needed to admit every day that I'm an alcoholic. I still do. I shouldn't say it in past tense. I need to accept every day that I'm an alcoholic so that I can make decisions according to that acceptance. Although it's invisible, um, it's real. And the same applies to my brain, my injured brain. Although it's invisible, it's real. And I can't function in the same way that I used to. In sobriety, I can't function the same way that I used to. And in stroke recovery with a vestibular disorder, I can't function the way that I used to. Side note, but related, I mentioned yesterday, I've been customizing my closet using cardboard boxes, okay? Because I'm a sucker for some upcycling. So I I have a box in my closet that's full of these beautiful heel shoes. There's boots, there's high heel like shoes for dresses and all these heeled shoes that I used to wear to work. I loved wearing heels because it made me feel different. Um, but I can't wear my heels anymore for the reason of I would fall over and break my ankle or break a hip because of my vestibular disorder. I just can't do it. And I've been holding on to this box of shoes for 3 years. And I made the decision 2 days ago that I'm going to get rid of the shoes. I listened to a short video on YouTube. It was somebody who Mel Robbins, I think. Sorry for messing up the name, but she's a very popular YouTuber that talks about mental health, physical health. Like it seems very oriented towards women. I don't listen to it all the time, but it is inspiring whenever I do. And so she was interviewing a woman who was like a personal stylist. And this woman said, if look in your closet, what are you holding on to that is connected to your old self? And why are you holding on to it? When you put it on, do you feel good or do you feel bad? And I'd heard that before. I'd heard that several years ago. Go through your closet, and when you look at an item in your closet, does it make you feel good or does it make you feel bad? And I discarded a bunch of clothes based on that feeling. I realized that there were clothes in my closet that when I reached for them, when I even looked at them, I had a feeling of either anxiety or discomfort or annoyance. For example, I had a sweater and the sleeves were too short, and I just kept holding on to the sweater. And I was like, after I heard that, I looked at the sweater and I'm like, I don't want to feel that way anymore. Why am I holding on to the sweater that has the sleeves are too short? Just because I like the color of the sweater and I like the neckline of the sweater. The sleeves are too short, and I'm not the happiest I can be when I put that sweater on. So I got rid of the sweater. Actually, I have a pile of clothes in there that I decided I wasn't going to wear anymore, and I'm going to repurpose them, of course, because I'm an upcycler. I think what I'm going to do is make quilts out of them. Anyway, let me stop before I go down too much of a tangent. But this person that Mel Robbins was interviewing said, are you holding on to a piece of clothing because it's a part of your new life or a part of your old life? And that's what these heels represent for me. They're a part of my old life. And it's interesting how I haven't wanted to let them go. Even though I've gone through this process of acceptance that I'm never going to work again. And I think that the more time that goes by, the more I'm realizing that that's true. It's hard. It's hard to accept that. I'm filling out my paperwork again for another year of disability. And this time I felt a lot more confident in the permanence of my disability. And it's interesting how I start to grow more comfortable in that reality. But these boots, I decided 2 days ago that I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to probably sell them on Facebook because they are so nice and barely worn. But so back to acceptance, sometimes the acceptance can feel like grief before it feels like peace. It feels like I don't wanna, but if that voice inside of me, the mother voice that's talking to the little girl inside of me, if I allow her to continue to repeat that this is reality, um, I start to feel the acceptance more and more. So I had to stop declaring war on myself. And that's what I was doing for the first 2 years after my stroke. I was putting constant pressure and self-criticism that I had to show up in the same way that I was showing up before my stroke. I needed to open my laptop and I had to get to the point where I was working as effectively and as long and intensely as I was before my stroke. And what it was doing to me was it was breaking me. I mean, that's what I always call it because that's exactly what I did. I broke myself and I've never been the same. After doing that to myself for 2 years, I've never recovered from what I did. And in sobriety, as I kept fighting myself, declaring war on myself, I was injuring my body to the point, thank God, that I have been able to recover. I'm sure there are parts of my body that I permanently damaged from the extent of drinking that I did. Um, that's I think once again mimics what I was doing to myself in stroke recovery, quote unquote recovery, when I was fighting myself. Stroke recovery actually required me to rest. And I was resisting that. I was resting just enough to check off the box. I wasn't being patient with myself. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to slow down, even though my body was telling me that I had no choice. I didn't know how to listen to that. It requires a deeper sense of self-awareness than I even was introduced to in sobriety. So these same principles that keep me sober have led me to, um, I should say, led me through the process of stroke recovery. So for me, it was only until I admitted, quote unquote, complete defeat that I opened the door to real healing and stroke recovery. The desperation that I was feeling in the first 2 years was replaced by willingness. As soon as I reached that point that I'm like, this is my reality, and I need to stop fighting it, stop trying to control the uncontrollable. And that did not mean at the end of those 2 years when I sat on my front porch and cried and made that decision that I had to leave my job. I mean, the decision was being made for me. It wasn't like I'm like, okay, can I keep working or can I not? I literally could not open my eyes anymore. And so that war that was going on inside myself against myself for 2 years stopped. The pain didn't stop, meaning the emotional pain. I mean, the physical pain, I think we know was in full force, but the emotional pain didn't stop. It just made the battle soften a little bit. The acceptance that seed that is planted in early sobriety was the same seed that got me on the road to healing. And it's acceptance. It's the very first notion of acceptance. There is something that can grow from that. And when I feel that first notion of acceptance, I'm able to see just a tiny glimmer of hope that life can still keep moving forward despite reality. That glimmer of acceptance stops my obsessive thinking about what I lost and start seeing, not necessarily believing, but start seeing that there are things that are available to me that weren't before. So with what is lost, new stuff is gained. when one door closes, when another opens. I mean, it's true. The thing is that when one door closes, sometimes I walk aimlessly around in that hallway until the next door opens. And that time that I'm meandering around in this hallway can be so empty and full of frustration and fear. The only thing that can keep me there until the other door opens is faith, is trusting. And I feel like I had a head start because of my sobriety. My sobriety taught me how to trust and have faith. And my stroke recovery just strengthened that. And that's why I come here to record the podcast, because I want to share that experience in hopes that somebody else can pick up that faith, that trust, and apply it to whatever adversity that they're facing. So over this this period of time where I've seen that glimmer of acceptance, and I'm starting to see I need to stop focusing on what I've lost and start looking at what's still here. Um, that was a long period of time. That was a couple years where I was so focused on what I couldn't do anymore that I couldn't see necessarily the the joy that was still left. And over the course of the following 2 years, so we would have been about 4 years post stroke when I started thinking, my mind just went blank. This is a complex sentence, so I've lost my place in it. Um, at about 4 years sober, I was starting to let go of the what I lost, and begin discovering. And that's what I was talking about yesterday. Discovering joy, discovering creativity, the painting, my podcasting, quilting, discovering things that I can be grateful for despite what I had lost, despite what I couldn't do anymore. And then discovering connection with people like me. And that is where I found stroke recovery support groups, vestibular support groups. And then it was there that I started discovering my own purpose. And it's been a long journey for that. But recovery is not, it's not returning to who I was, but using who I was. And I've mentioned this in the past, bringing forward the parts of who I was and using them for good today, using them for who I can be moving forward. And there's so much. When I thought of, when I heard that, and I thought of what are the parts of me that I can bring forward, I've been doing that all along. I was a marketing director, And this podcasting project, there's so much of my career that I've been able to apply to what I'm doing moving forward. And that has brought me a lot of comfort to know that who I was and all of that work that I did before my stroke, I didn't lose that. I thought I did. I thought I lost it when I was thinking about what I can't do anymore. I can't work anymore. Well, I can do the stuff that I liked about work, and that was being creative. And all of this process of admitting complete defeat and then having that be replaced by willingness and hope, um, it has allowed me to let go of this feeling of like trying to control things that I can't control. And I stop I stop abandoning myself in the present moment to look backwards. And instead, I'm I'm able to be present. I'm able to take forward the stuff from my past that I can apply to the present day. And I'm more present. I haven't lost myself. Um, I've talked a lot about this whole idea of identity, and I did a whole episode on it recently because I was struggling with this idea that I need to rebuild my identity, but I get it now. And today, I get to be present to care for myself. And I wouldn't be able to do that without going through this process. It's a long process, and it's a painful process, but it has helped me reach this point of continued acceptance. And that's what my stroke recovery requires on a daily basis. So I will end there. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will talk to you next time.